or development. And today I'm really excited and proud that we have an expert in syndication putting PPMs together. If you do not know what that means, but usually that means if you want to raise money to do bigger deals, you need to do a PPM, a structure, but you're going to learn more about that. But the one thing about the PPM, it does cost a lot of money. I say with our first deal that I did, I spent closer to 150,000. This man today is going to show you how to put this all together, how to run, manage, do investors relations, pretty much the entire gambit. If you're looking to set a fund at a price, I'll just tell you that I've never heard of. So that's why I said we have to share this because of his expertise, having $1.2 billion under management, overseeing so many funds, working at corporate, other institutions. You're going to see this man. And I know, Todd, after I started talking around with you, you're a legend in the industry because so many people goes, oh, I know Todd, especially with people dealing with any type of capital markets, finance, any type of money. So really excited for this one. I hope everyone pays attention. And there are going to be some, I would say, opportunities that you may not have. And this is this first go around that Todd is going to share. I just love to keep learning from you too, Todd. But the show is yours if you don't mind sharing the presentation that you have, and we'll do a little Q&A.
Awesome. Well, it's a pleasure to meet everyone, and hopefully I'll get a chance to meet everyone in person at some point if I haven't met you already. So, thanks for the warm introduction, Jim, and really looking forward to adding value to our group, to those that we work with, and I'm positive, just having been in the capital raising space, that this will do just that. So, with further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and get into the presentation and I'll open it up for questions after the fact. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. Maybe just give me a thumbs up so I know you're good. And perfect, awesome. So the title of this is called The Capital Raising Blueprint. And what I'm putting together is a full day, both virtual training and a live training on February 10th. Um, and this is going to really help you unlock, as it states, the secrets to starting and raising capital for your own fund and projects. And so, those of us in real estate, sometimes that could be us directly, and I think we all should be investing in real estate, but also your clients. I personally work with a lot of investors, builders, developers, landlords who do Airbnb. And the one thing that is a constant is people need more money. And so that's what we're here to help them do, which in turn not only helps us if we're raising for ourselves, but helps our clients if they're raising for their business. Um, so let me get over here. So let's go. As I shared on a previous call, I think we're in an age where things have never been better, not only to raise capital, but to really market ourselves and to do some amazing things. There's a little video that I just find pretty cool that I made on Sora AI, which is Open AI's platform for video creation. And it's just cool that we can do such things so easily and quickly today. So what if you could have unlimited capital, or at least have access to the capital that you needed for the projects that were available to you and or your clients? What would that mean to you, and what would that mean to your life? It all starts with a single step. I love this quote from Lao Tzu. That's just the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And some of you may have raised capital in the past, like Jim, and can understand some of the complexities and costs associated with it. And many of us may have never done it. We've thought about it, heard about it, but we haven't necessarily had someone there to really guide us. And my goal here is to really guide you on taking that first step if it's your first time. Little bit about me. I've done 8 investment funds, $1.3 billion in transactions, and it's all been in real estate and mortgages. And the focus of this presentation, this full day event, will be specifically for those investing in real estate. Not that the principles don't apply across the board, but this has been my experience, and it's something that I can speak very passionately about, and have probably run through a lot of the pitfalls and hurdles that we're all inevitably going to run into when we start raising capital in this space. A little bit more about My background worked at both Merrill Lynch and investment banking, uh, Bank of America Private Bank, attended both Stanford University and Johns Hopkins University. But I really had humble beginnings. I'm father of a child of a civil rights family, which was just awesome to be part of, and grew up in South Central LA. I put a number on here, 232. Just a reminder that my parents paid $232 a month, which, as you can imagine, living in LA, granted it was years ago, was still not much money, but it's a reminder of how far I've come. Um, and 5 a.m. Used to have to wake up every day or be at the bus stop actually at 5 a.m. to make it to school, which started at 8 a.m. down in Palos Verdes. So if you're familiar with LA, that's a pretty far trek. This is where I grew up, top left corner, 1340 West 57th Street. But I was fortunate to get a scholarship to go to a private school called Chadwick School up on Academy Hill in Palos Verdes. So every day I started out down South Central LA, went through Watts, Compton, Carson. Would get a carpool from Carson to get to school each day by 8 a.m. and then reverse that to get back home. Uh, and the reason I share all this is it really just starts with belief. I didn't know the first thing about managing money. I didn't know the first thing about real estate, but I was able to um, be in a position where not only have I done 8 funds and managed to purchase more than 1.3 billion worth of assets, but I've run a family office where I've managed money for two billionaire families and some other very extremely wealthy families, and it's a testament that if I can do it, that any of you also can do it. So what's the goal here? Ultimately, it's about unleashing your wealth. How can you become a successful fund manager? So not only are you going to be successful in real estate, but by leveraging other people's money, we've all heard that it will allow you to really unleash this potential that is right in front of you. We're going to go in through the intro of launching funds, the benefits of a fully operational fund, and really learn the secrets to success. In addition, really break down what is a fund, how they work, how do you leverage and scale your fund, how it actually provides you predictable cash flow, which I think is one of the best benefits for those of us in real estate. One of the things I really appreciated is, when you have even something as small as you know, um, $10 million dollars as an example at a 1 or 2% annual management fee, that's 100 to $200,000 a year that's coming in just for managing the money, which has nothing to do with your ability to actually be successful in managing money or doing your real estate deals. But the fact is, it does create this predictable cash flow for you. And then finally, it allows you to do more deals and you can maybe spread across multiple areas or asset classes, which in the end really diversifies your risk and or your client's risk. Success stories we can talk about, and obviously, this is not just the knowledge is not just for real estate, but I'm focusing and sharing it specifically for our group and for real estate. Uh, and what other things are important? Obviously, legal, structural setup. You need a private placement memorandum. You need your subscription documents. You need your corporate or partnership documents. You need to choose the right entity. You need to choose the right SEC regulation to actually, file an exemption under. And all of this stuff can be really daunting, overwhelming. And unfortunately, what I found myself doing, being raising a fund for my first time, and I think what most people do when they start a fund is they usually start with legal. They start and go get an attorney, and in doing so, you end up costing yourself a lot more money because you're walking through a lot of your business planning, a lot of your questions that are, really can be solved outside of sitting with the attorney. And so as we go through this, my goal in creating this program is to really reduce the setup costs to a number that is really unheard of by helping to train you and teach you how to have the answers to the questions that lawyers are going to ask, so that by the time you sit down with an attorney or by the time you use one of our preferred vendors, that it's going to be really basic for them to put together your legal documents. The other big piece is obviously building investor trust. How do we establish credibility? Um, are we presenting a professional image specifically towards raising capital and the ability to manage money? So we all have probably been successful in our careers, but making sure that it's a very polished look for this specific purpose. Being transparent, right? One of the things that I learned early in managing money is it's better to be quick with bad news than to hope and wait for things to turn around. Because the one thing you really don't get a second chance at is really, building and maintaining that trust. And once that trust gets broken because maybe you didn't share information in a timely fashion, it's really difficult to, rebuild that. The other thing we're going to talk about, how do we address red flags before we even start, you know, so that you're prepared for the questions that are going to come up from investors. Uh, we can highlight specific case studies that I can share not only from my own capital raising, but also from people that I've helped. Uh, and uh, and then finally, just some credibility tools. How do we create that additional credibility in what we're doing? Practical application. So it can be a pretty, long process. The goal here is to really streamline this and make it a much shorter process for you to get to market with your fund. Building your network. We all have great networks. Just being here in this group is one of those networks. But, from our personal friends to the high net worth individuals and various conferences. But today, more than ever, what's exciting is online platforms. Although it's the smallest arrow on the bottom, I would argue that it's probably one of the greatest opportunities we have today, as the Jobs Act of 2012 really changed our ability to raise capital like never before. You may or may not be familiar with this, but after the crash of 1929, it was prohibited for private placement operators or people like us who want to raise capital to do that through what's called general solicitation, meaning I couldn't just talk to a random person on the street. I couldn't put an advertisement or a flyer or any kind of notification that I had an investment for you. And this was due to the fact that there were literally people on Wall Street, on corners, that were selling investments into stocks and securities. And many people, as you know, lost their money during the crash of 1929. So in 1933, the SEC created rules that prohibited that unless you were a publicly traded company to do any advertisement. And as you can imagine, by the time you're a publicly traded company, you don't need to do general solicitation to get investors. Uh, and so after the Great Recession, the U.S., the government was looking to stimulate growth in the economy. They passed the Jobs Act, and in 2012, that one of the features of the Jobs Act was the ability to now break this 79-year-old rule, which was the ability for small investors or sponsors of investments to do what's called general solicitation. So there's some specific compliance things you have to follow. There are a lot of different, what I'll say, exemptions from Reg D, 506C, Reg CF, Reg A plus. I can go on with a couple more, but the point is not to give you alphabet soup, but just to tell you that now more than ever, you can put an advertisement on LinkedIn, Facebook, post it, and you can start to get investors even if you didn't have an investor network to start with. So I think it's one of the best times for those of us who are willing and able and actually have good projects to work on to really promote those and present those to people who can take advantage and make money together. How do we craft a winning pitch? That's obviously probably the most important thing that I've learned in this process is, you know, people are not only really buying a deal, but in a fund structure, they're really buying you. And how do you present yourself so that they really see you as the person to trust with money. One of the funny stories that I tell is I remember getting my second investor. I had a colleague, or not really a colleague, more of a mentor. He was a client of mine, but he's my gentleman older than me. He had gone to Stanford, and once again, using my network of people that I could reach out to. Um, my client Ken met with a new investor of mine. His name was Nick, and I was so excited to bring these two together for lunch. We sat down together for lunch, and Nick says to Ken, he's like, "Hey Ken, I don't know if we're gonna make any money, but I really like this kid." And it at the time that really hurt my feelings because I thought I had this great vision and this great opportunity to invest in. They were going to make a lot of money, but it's a constant reminder to me that people are really investing in you. And what I had was people believing in me. And so I ultimately found that most of my investors came from being first generation wealth creators. They were business owners who probably saw a little bit of themselves in me, and that allowed me to really take off to a new height. And so, as much as our projects are important, it's really you that people buy into. Um, Closing deals. Percentage of investors who cite the following is critical to closing a deal. The pitch is number one, transparent communication, number two. And as you can see, anything related to the deal is actually much lower than you would think. And I think it's just a testament to how much people really are buying you. And so the program ultimately, after the webinar and the live event on February 10th, the goal is that we'll have a program called Fund Ready. And this is going to provide you with a comprehensive set of not only legal documents, compliance, marketing, and investor relations support for a price that really is unheard of. And so when I look today, and as Jim started to discuss, he spent over $150,000 just on his legal setup for his fund. And I can, say in general, $100,000 is really not out of line for people that are just getting their legal documents set up, especially if you go to a brand name law firm. Uh, but you'll hear numbers anywhere from 25, 50, 100, $150,000 just to get legal documents. And so um, outside of legal, you still need your compliance, you still need fund administration, you still need tax and audit, you still need marketing, you still need investor relation support. And so the goal here is that we will bring that cost way, way down, where you're going to get all of that for a price of $25,000. The event is going to be February 10th. It'll be from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's going to be live here in Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. And there will also be a virtual option. There's a QR code I put here. I'm going to put it up on the screen, and I'll also drop a link to the form. And this, if you just pull out your phone, feel free to take a screenshot or open up your camera and click on the link. And it should take you to a sign up form. And the sign up form is just showing your interest. It's not for you to pay for anything. And at the end of the day, this full day webinar is only going to be in the hundreds of dollars, depending on where you want to be, from general admission to live to VIP. Um, and I hope to, really help create thousands of dollars of value, and hopefully much more than that if you're successful in raising capital. So that's about it. I'm happy to open up for any questions, and thanks for the platform, Jim, and I look forward to speaking with and meeting with all of you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I love the story. I can't get ever tired of how much you had to go through waking up 5 a.m. in the morning. And that's just one way. Coming back, you probably did your homework on the bus or however you could get homework done.
Yes.
But those are the things I love. It really is that story. And you're right, the pitch and the story people want to hear. So want to open it up to everyone. This is a very unique and rare opportunity to speak really to a fund manager, capital raiser, knowing the ins and out of this business. Just want to open to some questions. If not, I'll ask some questions because I got a load of them. Any questions from anyone in the audience? So Todd, let's say, you know what? A lot of times everyone thinks I got a deal, but I don't
Yep.
have money for a deal.
Hmm.
And there's that pathway from just setting friends and family in LLC. We all started that way, dipped our toes in the water. And then we went to, right, I can do this over and over again
Yep.
to, okay, I need to raise serious dollars to a PPM. How can anyone start? Let's say they're not ready, but I would suggest everyone listen and learn to be ready to something bigger. How do you get started? Let's say, how did you get started with something small? I'm sure you didn't. Well, maybe
Yeah.
you did jump to
Yeah.
something big, but
Yeah.
normally
So I
a
mean,
small LLC.
as you can imagine, Jim, it's like anything in life, the first steps are always the hardest steps. And for me, one of the reasons I shared that picture of where I came from is really not only a reminder for me, but a testament to anyone listening is that we all can get there, but we need exposure. Chadwick School, being in Palos Verdes, provided me with exposure to people that were doing things like private equity, that were, consultants or advisors to the president. I think Ronald Reagan at the time, one of my classmates was Rachel Laffer. Her father was Dr. Art Laffer, who created the Laffer curve and supply side economics. And he ultimately became a personal mentor of mine. And so it starts with exposure, and that's the intent behind this webinar. It's not necessarily say, hey, I need to be ready to go invest $25,000 or 100,000, pardon me, to start a fund. It's really to say, hey, let me get the information, the education, so that I know what's out there, because I just need exposure. And so that's, I'd say, number one. Number two is really being prepared to say, like, the beginning is definitely more difficult, but once you realize it's almost like AI today, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not plugging something into Chat GPT or Claude or whatever. And mind you, that's a relatively new tool and how much it's changed our life. And in the same way, we now have the ability to raise capital through general solicitation, which is a huge change. And although the laws changed in 2012, and we've all probably heard of crowdfunding, there's so many of us who still haven't taken advantage of a tool that the government has created for us to go out and raise money. Meaning, one of the reasons I felt this was so important is there are these barriers to entry, meaning if if I have to spend 100 or $150,000 just to get my legal documents done or to get set up, and I only want to raise, let's say, $1 million or $500,000, how can I make that make sense? Because it's such a large piece of the puzzle. And so the idea here is by focusing specifically on real estate, one of the, when you think about legal documents, the biggest document that is really talked about is the PPM, which is a private placement memorandum. And what is a PPM? It's really an advertising document that says, hey, this is what we're going to do. But most importantly, from a legal perspective, it's protecting you and disclosing to the investors what are all the risks associated with investing in these projects, right? And so the fact is, in real estate, those disclosures tend to be very similar, right? It's like there could be natural disaster, there could be interest rate fluctuations, there could be some faulty construction, there could be tons of things, but that are specific to real estate. And to the extent that we can focus our efforts and energies on helping people invest in real estate funds, I've been able to work with attorneys to say, hey, if you bring me clients, Todd, that you've already done all the legwork of answering the business planning questions. What is your business plan? What are those risks? What are those disclosures? We can now make that so much cheaper because those documents are really somewhat boilerplate. The hard part is the interaction that goes back and forth between a new fund manager and the attorney, where they're spending hours and hours and hours going back and forth educating you. And so my goal is to help educate you much cheaper so that the legal documents can be extremely affordable to have this package, that is really unheard of. And now, if you bring the cost down from 100 or 150,000, not including all the other ancillary things, you bring it down to 25,000. Now you could raise $1 million, and if I said, "Hey, I'd give you $1 million for a 2.5% fee, how many people would raise their hand to have, the opportunity to have $1 million to go invest? And specifically in real estate, what's great about it is $1 million with leverage, right? You can now go to the bank. The hardest capital to get is the equity capital. You can probably do a $4 million project. So, now you essentially raised $1 million for, say, $25,000 to do a $4 million project. And now your goal is, hey, can I make that $4 million project? Maybe you make $1 or $2 million on that project or what have you. And so the idea is give exposure to what's available. And I'll tell you, my first $4.5 million fund was much harder than raising $100+ million fund. And that just comes with time and experience, right? It's just a law of life. And my hope and my goal is that people will have the opportunity to at least have access to the information. And whether it's immediately, a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, you'll say, oh, you know what? I remember that conversation. I know I can get this done. And now I have an opportunity to go raise capital and do more deals.
One thing is, I think when we say real estate, once you do the PPM structure, Todd, what can you put in it?
Yeah. So, I mean, at the end, you can really do just about anything you want. I mean, that's that's really the cool part. I mean, about capital raising for yourself, right? The reality is, even from a lending standpoint, like we're in real estate, and if we've probably all been frustrated with the terms that a lender may give us or give our clients or what have you. Um, but once you start to get into setting up your own fund capital structure, you are generating and creating the terms. And so the fact is, you're going to be able to create what works for you. Now, obviously, the caveat is, do you have investors that are interested in investing in that with you? But the beautiful part about it is you're creating those terms, whether they be debt terms, whether they be equity terms, whether you want it to be something that's open to tons of people with very small investments or only open to a few people with very large investments. And so those are the terms you're going to put into your PPM. And it could, although I'm focused on real estate, it could be just about anything. It can be crypto. I mean, so yeah, that's really the cool part. It's a tool set that I believe will guide anyone and everyone. Think about EXP, as a company. They're a publicly traded company. Someone had to have a vision and raise capital to get that vision off the ground. And now, today, more than ever, we can do that ourselves.
Todd, and that's the exciting thing. I think people don't know what they don't know. Say, I'm just by myself. And you're right. It's your integrity, your network, your pipeline of business. But with social media, you're right. It's going to get bigger. I'm all about brand building. LinkedIn is where all the money and those connections are at. How many times do you name a name and you're like, let me see on LinkedIn who this guy is and who I'm connected so I can make the call? More than ever, Todd, that
Yeah.
little piece there, and it used to be the personal connection where you went to school and your private clubs to social media to get you in. If you can kind of share on that.
Yeah. I mean, it is really, a word of mouth business when it comes to um, raising capital. And I say that, from experience, what you'll see is that there's no substitute for leveraging the trust and the relationship that someone else has, right? So, if my wife comes to me and says, "Todd, I'd like you to talk with, you know, Jim." Well, and Jim is someone I work with. There's an immediate, you know, uh, transfer of a certain level of trust and relationship that's already built between those two people. And so, what I like to say is, like, one of my first wealthy clients that I worked with, and mind you, I met him through Bank of America. He had a liquidity event, first generation business owner. So it was an adhesives and grout business. Go figure. He says he sells glue. And he ended up with a liquidity event over $100 million. And he wasn't used to having that much money all at once, but that's what happened. He took a liking to me. He and his wife could never have kids. I met him the same month and year that my father passed away. And he almost became like an adoptive father, and I became like an adoptive son for him. And so, God really put, us together at a unique place and a unique time. And I share that story because that connection, that one connection opened the door where he then introduced me to his friend who said, Todd, I want you to meet my friend Gabby, who lives in Montreal. He has a lot of money. And when a gentleman who tells you who has $100 million of his own money says you need to meet someone who has a lot of money, you're like, wow, that's a wealthy person. And so I got to meet Gabby, and Gabby and his family became investors. And then later, Gabby was in my office. He was actually a partner in our management company at the time, and he said, "I want you to. I'm bringing in another business partner of mine, a friend of mine. His name is Elliot, and." He says, I want to let you know what kind of investor Elliot is because Nick and Gabby have both agreed to put in $12.5 million each into the fund. Um, so there was $25 million they were putting in, and he had told Elliot that they were putting in $25 million collectively, but Elliot thought, they were each putting 25 million. And Elliot said, where do I send the 25 million? And Gabby said, no, it's only 12.5 million. He's like, okay, well, where do I send the 12.5 million? And so, the reality is there are people out there that 10, 20, $30 million like is actually small amounts of money for them, which may really blow our minds. And I just leveraged the relationship and trust that Nick had with Gabby and that Gabby had with Elliot. And that's really how it grew. And so my last fund, I was actually planning to do a reggae offering where I could go out to the public and advertise and market to get a lot of people. And then these three investors said, hey, Todd, we'll give you all the money that you need. And so, you just will find yourself once you get in the game, you're going to find opportunities and doors will open up, especially if you can get people to just believe in you and you have that transparency and ultimately just showcase your humility. As great as we are as professionals, I think at the end of the day, people do really appreciate and respect humility.
Want to give everyone a chance. I'll keep asking questions, and then we'll put up Todd's course that's coming up live and virtual. April, you always have something. I wanted you to ask a question.
I was actually about to type a question in the chat. So I wanted to just make sure I heard correctly. Todd, did you mention that we can now publicize by way of social media deals that we have, even if we are not licensed?
That is correct. So the reality is the there are what are called exemptions for capital raising. So most funds today, and this goes from small funds to the largest Blackstone funds, are operating under a regulation called 506B. 506B does not allow for general solicitation. You can only market a 506B deal to people that or have a relationship with. There may be some specific exemptions if you're marketing to what are termed qualified investors, so like an institution or something like that. But the general rule is you cannot do what's termed general solicitation, meaning, hey, I want to throw an advertisement up to say, we're a blast and talk to a lot of people that I don't know or have a relationship with. You can't do that under the previous exemption. Today, since the Jobs Act, they created something called 506C, where you can, under that exemption, you can do general solicitation, not be licensed, um, and raise capital. Now, there are specific rules. Once you reach certain thresholds, your fund gets over $100 million, things of that sort. You may be forced to do additional registration or compliance steps. But for the most part, especially for those of us just beginning, it's a huge win. Now, 506C, you can only market to accredited investors, but then there's Reg A plus now, where you can market to everyone. There's Reg CF where you can market to everyone. And so the cool part is um, the government has set certain rules to kind of limit the exposure or damage that people could do. Meaning, if you go under one of the Reg A or Reg CF, those two exemptions will allow you to do general solicitation to the general public, but they'll limit maybe how much you can raise. So there's two tiers of Reg A, not to get into too many details. One has a limit of 20 million in a 12-month period. The other has a $50 million limit in a 12-month period. Reg CF has a $5 million limit in a 12-month period. But which of you, if you could get 5, 20, or $50 million every 12 months, would that not be helpful to grow your business, right? And so those are huge numbers when you think about it, especially in real estate, because you're probably going to be able to lever that, 3 to 1 if you so choose to use leverage. And so
Shut the
that's,
door.
mhm. Sorry, did
I'm
I?
sorry.
Oh, no,
I
it's okay. Yeah,
apologize.
it's no worries. And so the short answer to your question, April, is that yes, you can raise money without being licensed to do so.
Thank you. Listen, I'm over here. It's grandma's daycare as well. I apologize, team. Thank you so much, Todd. I've already registered.
Awesome.
I would like to join in the event in person.
Perfect.
And just that tidbit that you brought clarity to explains to me exactly why I need to be in that room. So thank
Yeah,
you.
and appreciate it. And like I said, it's always humbling when it's like, oh, do I put a picture of where I grew up? And I literally had just gone there a year ago or last year and took my daughter and my niece. We were in California for my daughter was doing some volleyball training there with a professional volleyball player, and I took them there, and sometimes it's just humbling to realize where you came from, and it's great for your kids to see that because maybe they've only seen one side of dad. They may have heard stories, but they haven't actually physically been to where I grew up, and I just thought, hey, at the end of the day, I just want anyone and everyone to know that it's possible. Like my dad, you know finished his last year of education was seventh grade education. um he and his brothers picked cotton in Clarkdale, Arkansas, growing up. My mom worked as a checker at Safeway supermarket. Um, and here I am. I'm closing down my last fund, which has three investors, two billionaire families, and one family that now has over $250 million. And why? How did that happen? Right. And I'm a big faith guy, so I give a lot of that credit to God. But there were a lot of people, and most importantly, someone opened the door for me to be able to go to a school like Chadwick School. And yes, I had to be at the bus at 5 a.m., but without that opportunity, I wouldn't have been able to be where I'm at today. Now married 25 years this in July, and 5 kids later, I've been truly, truly blessed.
Todd, thank you. And April, thank you for asking a question. And like I said, the biggest thing is no legal advice, right? Always use the third party. But what Todd does and can do is bring down billable hours. Because if you don't know, you blow through a lot of money. You don't know who to go to. You're learning from an expert. I cannot stress enough how big this opportunity is. Plus, there's other ways, you know, and I'll just go, Todd, write your business plan, put it together, build your deck. Because what they want to see investors track record, who's on your deck. Because let's say you had Todd on your deck. You're going to make money, you're going to raise capital easier because of that. But he's not going to sign off on everything. So there's ways to make it easier, but nothing beats, right, Todd? Hard work. You got to do the work.
Absolutely, absolutely. I see,
Yes,
there's a
question. There's a
hand
question.
raised.
Go ahead, Parrot.
Hey, Todd, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. I jumped in a little bit late. Can you give a 30-second overview of the event you were referring to?
Yeah, absolutely. Here, let me just I'll share my screen real quick again. And I'll just back it up. Let me make sure. Can you let's see, you should be able to see my screen here. So it's called the Capital Raising Blueprint. It's on February 10th. It'll be a full day from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Um, and we're going to have it live in Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. So I'm finalizing the venue. Is actually on with the people earlier. I don't want to give any places yet because I need to make sure it's secured, but we have two locations that we're contemplating, and then there will also be a virtual option for you to join as well. So the price point is going to be in the hundreds of dollars, not nothing overly expensive. But my vision and my hope is that it's going to provide you with, thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars worth of value to spend a day with me and to walk through these. I think to the extent that you can be live and you're in the area, great. You'll have direct interaction, obviously, with me. And if you can't and you can only make virtual, I encourage you to attend virtually because the information is gold, and that's really the core of the event. I don't know if that's enough information for you, but the idea is to really, if I go to the first slide, um,
That's
I really
perfect. Thank
want
you.
to focus on this idea of unlocking the secrets to starting and raising capital for your fund and your projects, right? The capital raising blueprint. And
Any
then
Perfect.
other
Thank you,
here,
questions?
I'll
Todd.
I'll I'll pull this back up, just the QR code. I've also put a link in the chat for you to sign up, and it's really at this point it's not asking you to pay any money to show your interest, but and if and quite frankly, if cost becomes an issue for anyone, please reach out to me. The last thing I want is cost to be the reason you don't attend, because I got a scholarship to Chadwick School. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here where I'm at today. I graduated Stanford with $11,000 worth of debt. So lots of people helped me to get where I'm at, and if I need to, pay for your ticket or something, I'm happy to do so.
Todd,
Any
quick
other
question
questions?
from me as well.
Go ahead. Please.
Are you also going to be covering evergreen funds by any chance?
Um, sure. I mean, I think those specific questions we probably don't have time to cover like in depth and detail in terms of the layout of the content that I currently have. But absolutely, I mean, out of my 8 funds, 7 of them were standard term funds, closed end, and then my last fund was an evergreen fund. So I have experience on both sides. And absolutely, I mean, to the extent that you have a strategy and can operate an evergreen fund. And for those of you who don't know what an evergreen fund, it's a fund that essentially does not have an end date, right? So, and there are lots of funds like that. You go on any Fidelity website or Vanguard, or many of them, they're not really geared towards finishing, but most private placements that are out there typically will have a term date, meaning they're going to be a 3 year, a 5 year, a 7 year, or a 10 year fund would be your typical kind of end dates, meaning, hey, at the end of this period, you're going to close the fund and return all assets or capital back to the investors. An evergreen fund, and which is what I did with my last fund, is one where you really never have to stop raising money or investing that money. And so, just for those who don't know what that means, but yes, it's something that I'm happy to answer questions, but I really want people to kind of get their feet wet and get started. But for those of you who are more experienced and are ready to go, happy to take it to that level of detail and how to get that going, because it is difficult, to set up and structure an evergreen fund because now you start dealing with, hey, how do I let people out? If it never ends, how do I get out of it? And it's easy to get out of something that's publicly traded, right? Where there's a market. But if you have an evergreen fund like my eighth fund, but there is no tradable market for it, how does an investor get out in 5 years or in 10 years? And so those are some of the nuances and tricks that I can help teach you to manage.
Todd, it's so exciting. I'm just like, there's so many things going on in this opportunity for buyouts of funds,
Mm.
DSTs, right? So there's where you start to where you can go. And I think
Yep.
the advice would save you millions, I know millions of dollars in this. April, another question.
Yes, thank you, Dan. We're sitting here, we're talking about raising
We can't hear
capital.
you, April.
Can you hear me now?
I
Perfect.
gotcha.
Okay, but you heard me saying shut the door. I tell you, right? We're sitting here talking about raising capital. Todd, what type of projects do some of you and your investors uh, fit into your portfolio? Because as you're speaking, I can think of several types of development projects,
Hmm.
both here in the United States as well as abroad.
Yep.
And so, what type of projects do you all invest in?
Yeah, so we have invested primarily the first seven funds were all distressed real estate and mortgage funds. So we started in 2009 with our first deal. We ended up purchasing 178 non-performing mortgages from the failed Bank United for 26 cents on the dollar. And to put that in perspective, let's take $1 million condo on the beach, real life example of an asset in our fund. $1 million condo. It was, let's say, purchased for $1 million before the crisis. The borrower had an $800,000 mortgage, typical 20% down. The value of the condo during the crisis went from $1 million to $600,000. The borrower was underwater, obviously. The borrower stopped paying for whatever reason. They could have lost their job, their business. They just chose not to pay because they were underwater and didn't want to throw their money away. Um, we ended up buying that $800,000 mortgage for $200,000, right? And so now what did we do? We then bought it for $200,000. I would call the borrower up and eventually I'd have full team doing this, but call the borrower up and say, "Hey, Mr. Borrower, this was the first call that they got that was like, every other call from the bank was, you owe us $800,000 plus taxes and penalties you haven't paid. How would you like to pay this off?" Right. And clearly that goes nowhere except foreclosure. And my call was, "What's going on? I lost my job. I can't afford it. I don't want to pay because I'm underwater." Well, the fact that I bought it for $200,000 gave me a lot of options because the value was still $600,000. They owed me 800. And so I'd say, "Mr. Borrower, what do you think about how about I give you $10,000 to move out of the place, get a new start? I'm going to forgive the $800,000 you owe me. And either I can use this money to fight you in court and go down a legal battle, or I can use this money to help you have a new beginning." And most of those people chose the new beginning. Now, I took that, put the house in the market for 599 and made money, right? And so, that's one thing. My last fund, we decided to start lending money to builders, developers, Airbnb holders, and so sky's the limit when it comes to the ideas, that you're really only limited by your ideas and your ability to sell that and create the perfect pitch for investors to see what you see, to see your vision. And there's two main things that capital raisers, specifically in real estate, do. They either do syndications, which is usually a deal by deal basis, or they'll do a fund. And the majority of deals in real estate are really syndications. It's like, here's a development project, and there's nothing wrong with syndications. That could be your very first start. It actually is a little bit easier to do a syndication than it is a fund. My goal ultimately is to help everyone sell sell themselves so that they're raising capital with people who believe in you and believe in your vision and believe in your strategy, not so much pressure and focus on the deal because now you're not re-raising capital when that deal is done. To the point of the question around evergreen funds, to the extent that you can someone to say, "You know what, I believe in you and I know you're going to be successful. Like, I want to be in the next deal and the next deal and the next deal." So now you're not constantly raising money for a new deal. You're just adding money to the same fund, which is now that's going to give you so much power in the market because a lot of syndicators end up struggling to have money to close a deal because people are, "Tell me when you have the next deal." And now a great deal comes by, i.e., in the crisis, and I don't know where we're going to go. I mean, I think everyone's optimistic with the new administration, but just like we had COVID, just like we had the Great Recession, anything can happen. And to the extent that you have people who believe in you, um, you're going to have so much opportunity because you're able to execute when other people can't execute. And so I'm a huge believer in raising capital, however you do it, whether it be syndication or fund. But I really want to push people to being able to build their own fund because that is what I would consider permanent capital. Those are people who believe in you and your strategy.
Thank you, April. Any other questions? And I'll ask probably a couple more, and then Todd, put your QR code. But this is just, I would just say, so invaluable for the knowledge and really playing it forward. Most people who are good real estate, and let's say I see people here that are experienced, you probably bought your own portfolio. You can roll it in as equity to raise it because now you have skin in the game, right, Todd? Skin in the game.
Yep.
It's not all
Skin in the
sweat equity. We hate to hear that. So, and
yeah.
also building the deck, right?
Yep.
Eventually, you start adding like a Todd or anyone else within that expert field and build a team. But we hope with what we're going to do now, as I am starting to do the Top Agent Nation methodically, we're going to build your credibility, brand awareness, how to go viral, how to expand your presence in social media, to then putting you into different programs so you kind of figure a pathway. I know the hardest thing is, and Todd, you know what? I didn't have as hard of a life as you did, but I always had mentors. If it
Yep.
wasn't for my mentors and people saying, I'm going to give you a chance, I'm going to give you an opportunity, I wouldn't be here. So I am like you. I want to play it forward, help those that really are not in the, let's say, alt investments, right?
Yep.
There's the primary Wall Street, but there's alt investments. And it's a wild, wild west, but there's opportunities as much as you want to hustle, network, plug in. And this is the good thing with Todd. Knowing the roadmap, like you said, the blueprint, but how to structure it, how to
Yep.
use a balance sheet from somebody, how to leverage other teams. Also, whoever did home flips or sat on the auction steps, let's say you found a great deal. I don't have the money. There's a larger fund, right, Todd, that we can do fund to fund. You could be a OGP, or
Yep.
we can structure as a minor right in there. So you never lose a deal. So, Todd, I know we're trying to build a community. So
Yes.
as small as it is to as big as it is,
Yep.
with the community structuring it, you can take it down.
Yeah.
So any questions? There's got to be questions because this is really exciting, but maybe everyone's sold to show up and see everything virtual. Any other questions?
I will certainly be there. The only thing that I would say, having seen a lot of syndicates gone completely wrong, my only hope is that individuals that get into this are getting in for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons, because we only need one or two or three or 10 more people that get in it, pardon my French, screw everybody over, and
Mhm.
then nobody trusts anybody else because it's like, well, I know someone who invested 100,000 or their hard-earned $250,000 and they lost it all. We don't need players like that. That's my
Yeah.
only hope, and I know that this is going to attract both good and bad. And
Mhm.
and my prayer is that we attract the good people that are there to actually help make it better for other people and pass it down.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great point, Unisha. And part of that idea around putting a team together is not just like marketing. It is around compliance. It is around fund administration. It is around investor relations. And so, the focus of this event, anyone can take any information and use it to take advantage of people, and we hope that doesn't happen. The fact of the matter is the intent and purpose behind it is pure, and I'm sure there's plenty of good people that have great projects and great visions that I'm hopefully empowering a lot of good and more good than bad. But I really want to emphasize that the only thing we can ultimately control is what we put out into the world, right? We can't control what other people do, and so I just encourage. I resonate with your prayer there, and but I just encourage everyone to not let that hold you back from adding your value to the world, right? Adding your value to those around you. And quite frankly, it's usually the people who have something good, that have a good heart, that are the ones that don't do it because they are afraid of messing up. And trust me, I can tell you from experience, um, it's scary managing other people's money. It's a huge responsibility to manage someone else's money, and so part of this process is not only helping you to do that, but to, to do it in the right way, to do it in a way that, does provide transparency, that does provide compliance, that does provide, because listen, the one thing for sure is we can't control what happens in the market. I don't care if you have the best deal. I mean, I've done over, 1.3 billion in transactions, and I can tell you we did not make money on every asset, but in our fund, we ended up making money in every fund. And that's the power of being able to do a fund versus if I only had individual deals, I would have had a lot of investors who had a great experience, and I would have a lot of investors who said, I lost money in that deal with Todd. The fund structure allowed me to diversify those investments to where every single fund made money, right?
And
And
Todd,
so,
like you said, we got through the last recession. No matter what we did was hard, but it's
yep,
upfront, making sure you don't take the money, full disclosure, risk and liability, right, to everyone, and how you manage it afterwards. You're right, making the hard calls, things didn't go so well, right? And others, because as long as you disclose well up front, laid everything out clearly, let everyone do their due diligence, you know what I mean? You say you protect yourself too. And that's what's important. But also as you grow your funding, you build your team, everyone knows everyone on LinkedIn now. Everyone can pick up a phone. They will know when you build a team, the credibility. So don't burn your reputation for a few bucks. I'll just
yep,
say that. You will never be able to raise money again, especially with social media. Anything you do, everyone will know exactly who you are. Todd, do you mind putting up the
yep.
QR code and final words from you?
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. So, yeah, hopefully everyone can should be able to see the QR code now. Yes, I mean, once again, I'll just encourage everyone to get the knowledge, right? This is not so much about, maybe the best knowledge is I'm not ready to do it now, but I at least have the knowledge for when I am ready. Because the one thing that will continue to happen is we're going to continue to have change. And so whether it's the AI revolution, it's another economic crisis. I raised money in one of the most difficult times in 2009, and it was because I was prepared, meaning I had already built relationships. I already had a foundation. And without that foundation, you're going to be playing catch up when the time is right. And quite frankly, as bad as it sounds, I mean, I look forward to the next crisis, not because I want anyone to go through pain or difficulty, but because I know there's opportunity in crisis. And and specifically, even as a man of faith, one thing that I was able to do when with a lot of people who were struggling, I was in a position to really give them solutions that no bank, no other institution, and possibly even another investor wasn't going to be willing to give them, because I was the general partner. I was the one in control. And so I think, we have to, as leaders, step out and take ownership, be leaders, and not be afraid to do the hard work of actually um, building trust, taking our good ideas and running with them, and once again, just really believing in yourself and the ability to add value to others. I'm constantly reminded of um, Chet Holmes and even Tony Robbins. I was at a something called Business Mastery in Fiji with both of them, and they said something that has still impacted me. Which at the time I kind of heard more as a sales pitch, but I as I've gotten older and a little bit wiser, I do appreciate what they say, which is like if you have something good, to offer people, it's like your moral obligation to help them at least have the opportunity to be part of it. And that could be, you being the best realtor for them. That could be you having a great opportunity for them to invest because maybe to the point made earlier, maybe there is somebody that's crooked down the street raising capital, and is going to take advantage. But you have an investor who wants to invest in local real estate or invest in a deal. Let you be the one that is doing things the right way. And I'll say one last thing. People don't invest for returns as much as you think they do. They really do invest for other things. And that's part of what we'll get into, which are really six human needs. But they do invest because of relationship, because of community. Yes, we want to make money, but people really want to connect with each other, and this is an opportunity to do that and do it the right way. So yeah, super excited. Thanks for all the great questions, and hopefully you'll find a ton of value in this presentation and full day.
Todd, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening and watching online also. It's very exciting. I think this year is very optimistic, but being prepared, watching Top Agent Nation every Wednesday, we're going to make it very intentional this year, what you're going to learn, what you could apply to really help you build financial freedom. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Todd, looking forward to the live and virtual event in Florida. So everyone have a great day. Thank you so much. And join us every Wednesday.
Take care.
Bye-bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.